Close enough. Good evening. This is the Gladstone Planning Commission. Call to order. Today is Tuesday, 15th of May, 2018. The time is approximately 6:30 p.m. This is Gladstone Planning Commission, Gladstone City Hall, 525 Portland Avenue, Gladstone, Oregon, 97027. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Langston?
Present.
Commissioner Natalie Smith?
Present.
Commissioner Malachi? Commissioner Poole?
Here.
Commissioner Wentz?
Here.
Commissioner Pat Smith?
Here.
Chair Rowlett?
Here. Let's salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, welcome everyone. I'm going to read what's on the packet for tonight. We'll first do the consent agenda, and that'll be 2 items. And then I guess we don't have much of an audience, but if anybody wants to speak about anything other than what's on our packet tonight, you'll have an opportunity to do that. We're going to have a public hearing on development of a small business park and discussion of Department of Land Use Conservation Development Housing Assistant Grant. So the first item, we're going to start with that. And I'll read this thing about the consent agenda. All items listed below are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a commission member or person in the audience requests specific items to be removed from the consent agenda for discussion prior to the time the commission votes on the motion to adopt the consent agenda. The items on the consent agenda are approval of the April 17, 2018 meeting minutes and the monthly planning report for April 2018. Does anyone wish to take anything off for discussion? Does anyone wish to make a motion?
I make a motion that we accept our meeting minutes of April 17th.
Motion made by Natalie Smith.
I second the motion.
Does that include everything on the consent agenda or just the minutes?
No, everything on the consent agenda.
Okay.
Thank you. Both items. Second?
Yes, I second that.
Seconded by Patrick Smith. All in favor say yes or aye.
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 Opposed say nay or no. Done. Next is our regular agenda, and it's a quasi-judicial hearing. And first I'll read the disclaimer. The public hearing is now open for the purpose of considering item Z0118-18 development of a small business park consisting of 3 buildings, associated site improvements to be located behind the existing single-family residence at 740 82nd Drive by Robert Blackmore. The procedure we'd like to follow tonight is Planning Department report, applicant testimony, proponent testimony, opponent testimony, applicant rebuttal, decision to continue or close a hearing, Planning Commission discussion and decision. Now, does any commission member wish to disqualify himself or herself for any personal or financial interest in this matter before us tonight, or does any commission member wish to report any significant ex parte or pre-hearing contacts? Please indicate if you had visited the site in connection with this application. We'll start down on the end and work our way down.
So I don't know exactly what
So,
I haven't visited the site, no, and I don't need to be
all right.
remove myself from it.
So you did visit the site?
I did not visit.
You did not? And you don't have any financial
No.
interest or ex parte contact? You've talked to no one
I've talked to nobody, no.
in regarding to this particular
Correct.
item?
Correct.
Okay.
I have no interest, nor have I talked to anybody, and yes, I did visit the site.
And I did visit the site, and I had a short, brief discussion with Planning Commissioner Patrick Smith, just kind of overall about, not specific to, but just some questions about general questions. He and I discussed that real briefly, where the driveway was, stuff like that.
I have visited the site, and I haven't had any contacts with anyone.
I've not visited the site nor talked with anyone, and I did not visit it other than to drive by and keep my eye out to look for that house.
I did drive by it more than once, and I did have a conversation with Chairman Roulette, more about what was on some of the materials that were being looked at tonight, as opposed to any disposition of the matter before us.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, just for clarity on the record, neither one of the planning commissioners feel like that discussion is going to impact their ability to give an impartial decision.
No, it would not impact my decision at all.
Nor mine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does any member of the audience wish to challenge the right of any commission member to hear this matter? Is there any member of the audience who wishes to question the jurisdiction of this body to act on behalf of the City Council on this matter? Oregon land use laws require that all issues be raised if the issues are to be appealed. Failure to raise the issues at this hearing may invalidate their further appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals, commonly known as LUBA. Any party has a right to request continuance of this hearing, or in the alternative, to have the record left open for 7 days. Failure to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the Commission to respond to the issue will preclude an action for damages in circuit court. If you're going to testify, please try to address the applicable criteria. Will staff present the report? Any questions about quasi-judicial hearings or what they are? Basically, the City Council appoints the Planning Commission to act on their behalf related to matters, certain matters. This is a quasi-judicial hearing, and it's a type of land use proceeding in which the decision maker addresses a narrow land use issue normally related to one or a limited number of parcels and existing criteria. So we make a decision tonight on this matter, and it can be appealed to City Council, LUBA, Circuit Court. Any farther than that?
It wouldn't go to circuit court. It would go directly from LUBA to the Court of Appeals.
Court of Appeals, okay. All right. Will staff please present the report?
Should we turn it on?
And if you need to move, feel free to move so you can see the screen if anybody needs to do that.
Yep. So before I start, I know that there was some concern raised about the site plans that were submitted, so I just wanted to address that from the get-go. We did incomplete the application and sent the applicant a notice with a request to scale site plans, building elevations, 9 other detailed information submittal requirements. We are a bit constrained by state statute when we send that out and the applicant responds that they want to submit only part of that information, that we can't again request additional information and leave it incomplete. So that's the situation that occurred here. So we took in the site plan that he submitted in response to the incomplete letter that was sent in, which was more detailed than what he submitted to begin with. The code does give us a little bit of leeway, and in conversation with the past city planner, Clay Glasgow, this is consistent with a site plan that was submitted for a previous design review application. So in context, we felt it was appropriate in this situation to accept these site plans for the completeness of the project, but based on Planning Commission feedback, in the future, if there are more specifications of what you would want to see for a completeness review and submittal requirements, that would be wonderful feedback to have from a planning side, so I can use that as part of the pre-application conference and explain that to the applicant.
I know Commissioner Malachi and myself and a few others had voiced before that we'd like to have a packet that was pretty uniform and standardized, that we would be looking at the same kinds of documents very consistently.
And that's also what we've tried to do with the new applications for design review with the update. So this was submitted prior to the new application being completed.
Wonderful.
So in that we have a very detailed list of submittal requirements, and in all the upcoming pre-application conferences for design review, we'll sit down and go through those with the applicants.
Okay.
This was kind of one of those in between in the transition, so apologies for the site plan.
Okay.
But
excellent.
hopefully we have enough detail in the staff report and in the presentation to give you the context of the
Okay.
project.
Thank you.
So the project is located on 82nd Drive. The existing area is a mix of commercial and residential uses. Directly adjacent to the site is about a 3.5-acre self-storage facility. The proposed commercial use would be consistent with these adjacent commercial uses. There's also a racket club located to the west behind the property. And a previous design review application, Z0408-17, was approved for a different commercial project on the same site. Because the proposal before us now was somewhat different than what was previously approved, we're processing it through a new design review application. So here you'll see the project site. The hatched lines are the 500-year floodplain, which is not regulated. You'll see closer to the river there's the habitat area overlay, as well as the 100-year floodplain and the floodway. So you can see that it's outside of any environmental overlays or floodplain that would require additional land use review and approval. It's in a C3 zoning designation, and it has comprehensive plan designation as general commercial. So the proposed uses on site are consistent with the comprehensive plan designation and the zoning designation. So this project was noticed pursuant to the City Municipal Code, section 1794-020. The only comments that were received were from the City of Gladstone Fire Department, and we can touch base on that more in a little bit. So here's the proposed site plan, and just for use of the presentation, we put an overlay of the buildings. You'll see building 1, 2, and 3. Those are all the proposed new buildings on the project. There is an existing home on the site. Code section C3 zoning allows for no side or rear setbacks. However, the applicant is proposing a 4-foot side setback, as well as a 5-foot side setback on one of the lot lines. And we put in existing vegetation imagery where there is an existing hedge separating the racket club from the property on the south, as well as trees that are blocking and visually screening the property along 82nd Drive. So the proposed project meets the 20-foot front yard setback. While the applicant is proposing to construct metal-sided buildings, there is existing landscape screening that a proposed special condition would require to be maintained and replaced in perpetuity. We can talk more about that later. The applicant's also proposing to place wood facades on buildings 1 and 2 where they are facing 82nd Drive, and sliver views might be available as you're driving by through the trees. All the proposed commercial uses are consistent with C3 zoning. The applicant does not know exactly what uses will go in there, but he has confirmed in writing for the record that they would all be uses that are allowed outright in the C3 zone. Fire access would be determined as part of the building permit process, so no building permits would be issued until fire department approval is received, and that's implemented through a recommended special condition of approval on the project. So here's a Google image overlay of the project site. You'll see the hedges on the back abutting the Racket Club property, and then the line of trees abutting 82nd Drive that currently provide visual screening of the property. If those trees were to be removed or die of natural causes, there's a special condition attached to the design review, special condition number 1, that would require they are replaced with trees that would mature to the same size. That's kind of small, sorry about that. This is the list of recommended conditions. So we have our standard conditions on there, and then special conditions related to municipal code section implementation, lighting, trash, traffic, site landscaping. And we've pulled out a few of these just to highlight. So for the proposed building design, special condition, it says 11, but it's supposed to say 1 there, sorry about that, will require maintenance and replacement of landscape screening to block views. And the actual special condition language is a little bit more detailed than that. I don't know if you had a chance to read it yet. It requires existing trees or shrubs to be maintained in good growing condition, to visually screen the proposed commercial buildings from the public roadway, and whenever necessary, they should be replaced with new plant materials to ensure continued compliance with applicable landscape screening requirements. It says any replacement screening vegetation will provide similar or improved visual screening and shall comply with City of Gladstone's native plant list. No invasive or noxious plant species will be used. Special condition number 4 also requires that the buildings incorporate energy efficient design. Special condition number 3 will require that any on-site lighting meet the requirements of the municipal code, such as dark sky, lighting requirements, shielding. For general landscaping, special condition number 7 will require submittal of a landscape plan that meets code requirements prior to the issuance of any building permits. We worked with the applicant. He was unable to provide a full landscaping plan at the submittal phase of the design review, so we placed this condition on there to ensure that the landscape coverage percentage requirements of the code are met, and we'll be reviewing that plan and signing off on it before any building permits can be issued through the county.
Will that landscape design come before the Planning Commission as well for us to review it?
No, that's administrative.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. We would just be signing off on it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. I'm happy to provide information though about it if you have questions at the time. For circulation and site improvements, special condition number 6 will ensure the project does not result in adverse traffic impacts. So you can read the specific code requirement in there. I think it's 1,000 trips generated. So not knowing what exact commercial uses are going to go into the buildings, we felt that this condition was warranted to ensure there weren't any adverse traffic impacts on the circulation network. Special condition number 11 will require the applicant to receive city fire department approval prior to the issuance of any building permits. I know Mike was concerned and has been coordinating actively with the applicant about fire access requirements for the site. So he gave his willingness in writing in an email that the application should go forward, that they can work this out as part of the building permit process. But the applicant would need to get approval from the fire department before we could sign off on any building permits. So we would get that figured out before building permits are issued. So these are just highlighted special conditions. I'm happy to go over any other ones if you have questions.
I have some questions on number 6 as it relates to traffic.
Sure.
Some of the language, at least in the paperwork we have, it talks about that they cumulatively wouldn't generate more than 1,000 trips based on transportation engineer's report. Well, I wasn't a math major, but 1,000 trips in a 12-hour business day is basically less than 1 a minute.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you cut it in half, that seems like an inordinate amount of traffic for us. I'm just wondering, how did they arrive at that 1,000?
I'm not sure that's directly from the code, from the municipal code requirements.
And then if you have that many people, you get into ingress, egress is 2-lane, you know, with people lining up to either turn right or left. 82nd Drive is a highly used commuting, maybe at 10 in the morning or 2 in the afternoon, it's not so bad, but from, 6 in the morning till about 9, and then from about 3:30 to 6, it's pretty jammed up.
Right, and given the adjacent commercial self-storage facility and the review that went on during that process that I asked Clay about, it sounds like the uses that are proposed in these commercial buildings wouldn't generate even as much traffic.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine that.
Facility.
That's why I question where that came from.
And it sounds like a lot of the commercial businesses would be kind of more of a industrial warehouse nature. You wouldn't be generating a lot of kind of customer visits or traffic like a storefront or a self-storage facility. But just in case there were ever complaints or concerns about traffic, that's why we have that requirement on there, and we couldn't go more stringent because that's what the code language is, so that's where that condition comes from.
And the other one, it's nice to see that they have more parking than they're actually required to have, but only 2 bike slots, is that adequate?
That's what the code required.
Okay.
That's a code requirement. The applicant was very amenable to providing more, but that was what the code stipulated. I'm sure we could work that out if that's a...
More of a question than a suggestion.
Mm-hmm.
Is the code based on square footage or actual parking spots?
It's a bit complicated. I can go to that section.
No, it's just a question. I just know some places are different.
I think I put it in the findings, but it's in the parking and off-street parking and loading, 1748. So it's 1748-050 bicycle parking standard. It says required parking in all developments required to comply with this section shall provide a minimum 5% bicycle parking spaces based on the city's required minimum number of automobile spaces. And it says all developments shall have a minimum 2 bicycle parking spaces. So I think I just multiplied 5% by 20. Okay. Any more questions about the special condition? So this is our recommendation that the Commission approve this design review with conditions pursuant to the staff recommendation. We did have one additional item to touch on, though, that I can go back to this slide after I just give you a briefing. So initially the applicant had submitted an adjustment application. He thought, based on the depth requirements of a standard parking space, that he would need an adjustment to modify the aisle width between the parking spaces in between the 2 main buildings that are proposed. We've since looked at it. He's proposing to develop just compact parking spaces in that area, and because of that he would meet the parking aisle width requirements of the municipal code. It's also a little up in the air with the fire department comments and requirements, how the parking would move around. He will meet the code minimum requirement for parking and above and beyond that, but in terms of where it's laid out, they're going to kind of work that out a little bit. So he is here to formally withdraw the adjustment application and verbally commit to these 2 requirements, that a maximum of 50% compact parking spaces on site, so he wouldn't be providing over 50% compact parking spaces as a code requirement. And then a parking aisle width of 24 feet would be adhered to for all the 90-degree angle parking spaces. I guess he can respond to that formally after the presentation. So, let's see, I think that's it. That concludes staff's presentation. If there are any questions, we can take them now.
Commissioners, questions?
I don't have any questions. That was an excellent presentation. Thank you.
Is the applicant or his or her representative present? Would you like to add anything to the staff report?
For purposes of the record, I'd like to note that I'm present and be happy to answer any questions. And I don't have anything to add to the staff report. I think she did an excellent job.
Commissioners, do you have questions of the applicant?
Oh, and can you formally withdraw the adjustment?
You need to come up and speak in front of the mic, sir.
Could you please come and just state your name, and you don't have to give your full address, to, you know, where your office is or whatever.
Good evening. My name's Bob Blackmore. I'm the applicant, and I'm here on behalf of the High Rocks Small Business Park, and that's the address that I put forth. With regard to withdrawing the modification, is my understanding on how that works and how it would apply to this site. I'm happy to withdraw it, and because I believe we can reach compliance on all matters in that sense. With regard to the presentation, I really don't have much to add. I think it was a good presentation of what we're trying to put forward, and so I'm here to answer any questions if anyone has any questions I'd like to ask.
I have a question and a comment. Parking is a real sore spot these days everywhere, and I know you're hearing this, and I'm a big proponent of business and development, so here I am saying I'm for this from what I'm seeing, but I get real concerned when I see gray ideas about how we're going to meet parking, and so obviously you're addressing that, but I think the final design of that and how practical that parking is and the traffic flow is really critical. And when you're changing here in the middle of it, I know you're not there yet and you're going to get there, but I'm just expressing that there's a real concern from this body, and at least especially from me, about how we address traffic flow and parking. So I know you'll get there, and I just want that on the record.
Did you have a question?
Is there a diagram that's
Well, I appreciate the concern, and what we're trying to do is to make sure that we have the right aisle width that is satisfactory for fire and vehicles and so on, trying to keep the width on the stalls so that they are big enough for standard size, but we're cutting down the length of them, which seems to be appropriate in this sense. And plus, we're providing more parking than is required under the code. So I think I'm doing as much as I can do there without paving over the entire front, which I don't think is a good trade-off. So I think having more than the required parking is a good thing, and I've tried to get as much as I can there, and dealing with the trade-offs of maintaining landscaping and visual aspects on it. I hope you think it's a good solution.
Thanks.
Commissioners? Questions?
It's just the information for plan-wise, there's not a whole lot of information on there. You do have, there's consideration for water retention and things like that, or because you're going to asphalt everything, or the parking area?
The parking area that I wanted to have a non-asphalt so the water could flow through. I'm advised that the city requires that it be asphalted, that it be covered entirely. So when we get to stormwater considerations, there may be some of those issues in terms of ponding or some sort of slowing the runoff off. So I'm not sure what that solution's going to be at
Okay.
this point.
Yeah, I would have expected to see like a grading plan with some sort of drainage system.
The property's flat in the upper part. It's just entirely flat up
You're
there,
gonna
which
have
is...
a lot of water displacement. You know, asphalt's not permeable, nor are steel buildings. So,
Right.
you know, just making sure you're not sending that water off to your neighbors for them to deal with. You know, you want to make sure that you're
Very-
properly taking care of it.
I appreciate the comments.
Mhm.
I'm concerned about those issues, and we'll make sure
Awesome.
that is handled properly. Frankly, I fish in the Clack in this river, and I want to make sure the water stays good.
Absolutely.
So,
Also, too, on your structure drawings, will we be required to provide engineering for the trusses for the buildings?
So our county building codes would be requiring, I'm sure, that the building plans and design is consistent with the state structural codes
Mhm.
for the building permit
So
process.
they'll have to be stamped.
Yes, I'm sure that that's what they would require for this building. Yeah, but everything I've seen them approve for City of Gladstone so far has had that level of information for a building permit for a structure at least.
Okay.
And just really quick to go back to the what you were asking about the entire site being paved over and
Well, I saw
water
that there was
water quality.
50% had to be landscape, right?
It's 4,574 square feet is the actual amount, which
Mhm.
meets the code requirement. So there would be a considerable amount of landscaped area still on the property, and we would work that out as part of the landscape plan submittal.
Mr. Chair, while the applicant is up here, since he is not opposed to committing to no more than the 50% compact space and also maintaining the 24-foot corridors, we might recommend getting his consent to the addition of one more approval condition stating that no more than 50% of the spaces shall be compact spaces and that the 24-foot corridors will be maintained.
Would you be agreeable with that?
as I understand the condition, yes.
So do we do that now?
You can do that as part of your motion to approve, just with adding that last additional
Okay.
condition.
Commissioners, any more questions of the applicant?
Is there any requirement for site lighting on your property?
Yes. The site lighting is in the conditions.
Number 3 on page 4.
Lighting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think we do.
Just so that he's working.
I have a question about the fire access. You're working with the Fire Marshal, Funk, right now to remedy his issue with the hose, I think, not being able to reach the farthest.
Yes.
And, Mike, is there anything that you want to add to that during the applicant's time, if you wouldn't mind, sir?
That's fine.
The exchange that Mr. Blackmore and I have had back and forth, it first was with several conversations. We both agreed that we wanted to make a development that worked, and we wanted to have a safe development. And therefore, we came up with a couple of different options. We looked at a couple of different things, and we agreed that basically we have to meet the fire code. We have to be able to reach those certain areas. There's a little bit of give and take that's within the fire code. We're looking at where we can apply that and still have both a productive industrial park and meet all of our fire code. And I'm confident that we're going to be able to reach that, which is why I had originally communicated, here's my concerns, we're not meeting. At the same time, I had a phone call, like within 30 minutes we had a phone call that says, hey, what about a condition of approval on that? And I think that was a great solution between the three of us, and I'm confident that we're going to be able to reach that. I wanted to make sure that that was a placeholder, wanted to make sure that that was a condition of approval, but I have no reason to believe that Mr. Blackmore has any interest in not meeting that. I think he does want. So, is there any other questions for me?
Questions about that? Thanks for getting that on the record, on the video record. It helps a lot.
I think that was worth it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else you'd like to add?
Nothing else to add?
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Now's the time for public testimony. Please approach the podium and state your name and address. We will first hear testimony from proponents, that is, from people who support the application. Then we will hear testimony from opponents or people that oppose the application. Would anybody like to speak in support of the application? Seeing none, would anyone like to speak in opposition to the application? So we have no public testimony. I will entertain a motion to either close the public hearing or continue it to a date certain. What is the pleasure of the commission?
I make a motion that we close the public hearing.
Motion made by Natalie Smith, seconded by Les Poole. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay or no. None opposed. Motion passes. Now we are going to discuss the application and make a recommendation. Commissioners?
Is this where we put in the extra condition about the parking? Or is that at the end?
Yeah, that'd be a good time now to put that in. How would you like to wordsmith that parking? You had a nice...
You said it nicely. I didn't copy it all down that nicely.
I'd recommend a special condition 17 that states something to the effect of no more than 50% of the parking spaces shall be compact spaces, and the 24-foot corridors shall be maintained. And I'll just note for the record that both of those one is required by the code and the other one's required by the fire code. So it's just, as much as anything else, you're clarifying what is required to address Commissioner Poole's concern.
Thank you.
Was there something said about the width of the parking spots? I don't know, or was that something I misheard?
So,
I mean, I
yeah,
thought I heard
so
something
Melissa,
about
the code provides minimum widths as well in there. So it looks like the stall widths are 8.5 feet and depths are 16 feet.
And the aisle with 24 feet.
24.
So in between those two.
Okay.
And that 24 is really important. I mean, the fire official can speak to that, but that's for the fire to get their equipment down those aisles as necessary.
Okay. So, how's this sound? I ask that special condition number 17 be that there is no more than half the parking compact size, and that the 24-foot corridors are maintained for the width.
Motion made by Commissioner Wentz. Second.
I second.
Second by, and pronounce your last name again, Langston. Commissioner Langston. Your first name is the one that I was having a hard time. Andrew. Andrell.
Yep, we got it.
All right. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Oh, that we're adding that, but we still have to discuss. We're not closing the public hearing, but we're going to add that as when we make a motion to approve this. That'll be in the conditions.
Special
Sorry.
conditions, yeah.
So, discussion.
I don't have any discussion. I think it was a excellent presentation, and all those special conditions have been listed out. I don't know how we add this in when we want to go ahead and take a vote regarding making sure that all the fire department concerns are included as well.
I think it was in there already, isn't it? As
It's
one of the
special
conditions?
condition number 11.
Yeah.
Perfect, then I won't worry about it. Okay.
Any more discussion? Someone would like to make a motion to approve, Z0118-18 with conditions in the packet plus the special condition on parking.
So, quick point of order, you have a motion on the table to add a condition to the
Okay.
recommendation, so I think the commission should vote on that, and then you
Okay,
can
let's vote on that.
And then you can vote on the...
I guess I should have done that after all.
You were doing the right thing.
All right, let's vote on the condition to add the special requirements for parking. And that motion has been made and seconded, I believe.
Yes, I have, motion was made by Commissioner Wentz, seconded by Commissioner Langston.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no or nay. None opposed, motion passes. And now,
Would you like me to make a motion, Chair
yes,
Roulette?
please.
I make a motion that we approve application number Z0118-18-DR, including all special conditions.
A second.
Made by Natalie Smith and seconded by Commissioner Wentz.
And for the record, again, that includes the new added special condition 17.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Langston?
Yes.
Commissioner Natalie Smith?
Yes.
Commissioner Poole?
Yes.
Commissioner Wentz?
Yes.
Commissioner Pat Smith?
Yes.
Yes.
Chair Rowlett?
Motion passes. Congratulations, and thank you very much for your presentation. We appreciate that very much. Did we close the public hearing?
Yes, you did.
We did. Okay, good.
No, it's like...
Now we're on to the next item, which is a discussion of Department of Land Conservation and Development, LCDC Housing Assistance Grant, and I apologize for stumbling through this. It's been a while since we've done it quasi-judicial.
You did just fine.
Yeah.
You did good.
So, do we have a presentation?
I did not prepare a PowerPoint presentation for this one, and I'll just give you a brief summary since it's kind of landed on my desk a very short time ago, and we've been scrambling to try to present it to you and figure out how to go forward in the process. So we were contacted by DLCD regarding a new housing assistance grant that they have available. Jennifer, who works for DLCD, suggested that Gladstone would be a great candidate for the grant. The intent is to improve housing affordability, and so they've allocated grant funds for housing technical assistance. It's a three-part grant. The first component is housing needs analysis. Second is a code audit to identify gaps or holes in the code that could be improved to allow for better housing affordability being provided in a community and housing accessibility. And then the third part would be a code audit, or a code update based on the results of the audit and what the findings were from that of how the code could be improved. So we were a bit concerned at first because the City of Gladstone is already a part of the housing assistance. Sorry, let me get the wording right. It's the countywide housing needs analysis. So we called DLCD to make sure that even though Gladstone was already a part of that effort and that analysis, that it was still appropriate, but the potential was still there to only partake in the stage 2 and 3 of the grant. Jennifer at DLCD felt that that was okay on all levels and appropriate if Gladstone was interested in going forward with the code audit and the code update portions of the grant. As far as I know, and I don't have an exact date because I haven't had time to confirm it with our other county staff, But the countywide housing needs analysis is moving forward on a great track, and there's no reason to think it would hold up any part of the other grants if Gladstone wanted to go after them, the audit and the update. So Jennifer also explained there's flexibility in how those all work together, and that she did not think it would be a conflict or a problem at all. They would be looking basically at the results of the housing needs analysis, the countywide, and then hiring a consultant who would work closely with planning staff, as well as DLCD, to go through the code and do the audit, and then they would move forward with the update. Any code changes, anything like that, that would need to go through all the normal procedures. It's not like something the consultant was recommending would be automatically approved or anything like that. So there's no concern there. I would go through the normal noticing and public hearing process. This is something that Jennifer and DLCD think would be a great opportunity for Gladstone. Based on my review of the existing residential zoning districts, there's definitely some need for improvement in certain areas, and I think the opportunity for an audit, to just have someone go through and look and give a recommendation about where it could be improved, and then planning staff could use that to look through and agree or disagree and have a staff report, and then you could all look at that in that context. So I think that having that help would be great for the city. But it's up to you to recommend to City Council whether they go forward with signing off on the grant.
So how would you, kind of see this, like, as far as money or hours? Because, as you know, last month we went through a lot of the stuff with the code, and there's more stuff coming.
Right.
And basically, I mean, it could be an endless, we could work on this for years, I think, and probably not get it to the point where we would like it to be. So this would be a great opportunity, I think, for the city and the planning commission to be able to recommend to city council some real substance in the changes instead of the, red lines to get through it, like we did last month. So what how big of a grant do you think this would be?
I don't have that information yet, and this is why I wanted to have a little bit more time before bringing it before you, but the timeline is constrained such that I thought at least we could present it to you, so we can get those details moving forward if you would want that. But DLCD hasn't formally given us the application yet, so I don't have all of the details. All they've given us is a memo that really what we did is copy the substantive parts of it in the schedule and put it in here for your review. So I don't have those specific details yet. The application would need to be acted on by the city council and signed by a public official. It's my understanding at that stage, when it goes to city council, they would understand the financial kind of contribution of each parts of the grant. We would have that information. We could prepare a staff report or a memo for their review purposes. But unfortunately, I don't know those financial specifics at this time. So.
You have questions, commissioners? Comments, questions?
Well, I think it sounds like a great idea, and the way I read it, actually, I thought the grant was just to have them do those things, the audit and the update and stuff, which would be great if the grant was to cover those items. I mean, I don't even see how that could be anything but a win situation for us.
Yes.
Yeah, my only reservation would be some of the possible requirements or infamous fine print that sometimes comes with a grant, but unless it's real restrictive or kind of puts us in a one-size-fits-all box with everyone else, I'm certainly in favor of this. You bet.
I would have to concur. I'm sure the grant would be reviewed by legal before we would, okay.
So, would you like a motion from us to ask City Council to...
I don't think it's a formal item for you to act on. I think you just would collectively say you recommend that City Council sign the application form.
Yeah, essentially, I mean, you can by motion recommend that council move forward with the grant, but ultimately it becomes it's the council's decision. So, but there's certainly nothing to stop the commission from forwarding a recommendation.
I make a motion that we recommend the city council look at this grant and act on it.
Motion made by Commissioner Wentz,
I second.
seconded by Commissioner Langston, and I think that's a good idea. So that's, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. None opposed. So thank you. That's a formal motion that I think they'll appreciate.
I would just add one thing. Jennifer's been at DLCDC for probably, I don't know, 20 years. And every time I've ever dealt with her, she's always been really responsive. And it's hard to work for the government and be there that long in the same job and still have everybody like you.
Yeah, I can imagine. Okay, guess that's all for the regular agenda. Business from the Planning Commission.
I don't have anything.
I liked your presentation. It was excellent. It's nice to have that moving forward, other than just listening to someone speak. I think that was a great way to present to us, and I want to thank you for that. And I also love the monthly report we get, and not that I'm picking on them. I see everything for Tyrone Way, but I know there's been more stuff that's been going on, like paving part of a parking lot over there on the old Tebow's property. What's the status on that?
I was waiting for the opportunity to give you an update.
They're not following what they're supposed to be.
So Sean sent out a violation letter on May 8th based on the template that was brought before you.
Okay.
Listing the two kind of violation components, I think display of vehicles in previously approved landscape area, and then surfacing with rocks and or other materials.
Yeah, they've asphalted a whole area, and I was like, wait a minute.
Asphalt.
Yeah.
So they promptly responded by calling me this week and asking how they could remedy the violation right away. So we have a meeting set up with them. We were trying to schedule it for this Thursday. They want their management involved. They had a conflict that day, so we tentatively have it scheduled for next Tuesday. So we will be actively working with them. Sean's going to be part of the meeting. We're going to go through the design review and explain to them exactly what the context of the approval was and how they need to bring the existing property and the uses on the property, like vehicle storage and display, into compliance.
Okay.
So hopefully we'll have momentum there. The next time we meet or in the monthly update, I can give you a report.
I also want to make sure that you follow up and find out if they took out permits for asbestos and the remediation and the lead paint, because I bet you they didn't. So,
as far as I know from just looking at our building permits in the county, there was some water damage in the walls that was discovered as part of the previous approval. I don't know if that also encompassed asbestos. I still need to talk to our building codes folk about that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, I find myself agreeing again with Commissioner Poole on this parking issue. I'm a believer in grassroots. I think good ideas come up and often are generated at street level. And I'll use the 24-hour fitness property over here on Arlington that I think went through about a year ago. There's still a pod out in front that looks like it's going to have 3 doors in it for 3 separate entities. And the parking lot is often full. We're not doing the citizens of the Gladstone for sure in the metro area in a larger vein by continuing to swallow inadequate parking for public and access for public facilities. And as a group or individuals, we're powerless to do anything about it, other than that hopefully others will join our voice and try to do something about it. Putting buildings in with 40, 50 units where people are going to live and it doesn't have adequate parking, whether or not it falls in with zoning, we're still not doing the right thing by continuing to let this develop and build.
Libby?
Okay. I think I remember Commissioner Smith saying something about getting some sort of idea when people want to get permits that seemed to fall right into it. It was about the building up on Portland Avenue, where the pizza place, next to the pizza place, and they put in doors which were technically okay, but they might not be quite what the city was showing down there. Well, my concern is about other, like, individual houses, which I can't even believe I'm saying something like this, specifically like the EDU, but also there's a building on Arlington, a house that was built, and I wrote down the address and I've forgotten it again, and I'm sure it's within the 35 feet, but it's got real pointy roof that doesn't seem to, I think it just sticks out like a big sore thumb. So I was wondering if we could find out when stuff like that's going to happen, because because there's two types. The one that looks like it's a duplex, the doors that were made that just are out of nowhere, and in my opinion, that new house with the pointy roofs. Did anyone else notice that building?
I did.
Okay. So.
That's the same one.
But this is a great start with what you're doing, putting down the permits that were taken out. Yeah.
Yeah, that would
I
give
love
us a
that.
heads up about.
Yeah.
There's a lot more that'll be on the next
Good.
month's report.
That's what I want to see. Yeah, that's excellent. Thank you.
I've got just a parting subject, one that's been flying under everybody's radar. I don't know if you folks have been watching the tolling issue, but I participated in a transportation bill last year in Salem, and we got it down to $5.2 billion. Well, the last thing that got dropped from that was addressing I-205, and the tolling study, at least in spirit, was initially to finance increasing capacity and dealing with that. And as time has gone on now, ODOT doesn't intend to increase capacity, but they intend to toll the freeways. If you think 82nd Drive is busy now, just wait. And, here I am being the fearmonger, but you don't need to be a rocket scientist to see that the public is not going to be able to afford it, and there's no social justice that's going to make it work. So I'll get off my soapbox, but hopefully the city staff and everybody that's within earshot thinks about where that's going to be, and we need to let possibly the city or even as individuals know that there's concerns about the spillover traffic. So thank you.
I've got a couple of things, with going over the code and updating the code, and at some point we'll probably be talking about system development charges, like what was on the parks thing. And I sent everybody a link to an article about Portland's system development charges on accessory dwelling units, which is a very unpopular subject in the city of Gladstone. People don't want duplexes, or at least a group of people, and so forth. But yet we talk about affordable housing, and we're going to probably start charging system development fees, which we have not looked at yet. I just wanted to mention that. And then there was an email that went out asking for volunteers to be part of the citizen planning organization that is wanting to form in the city of Gladstone. And I want to make sure everybody's email addresses are up to date, so if they're not, can you please send them?
I've received your note on it.
I received your email message as well.
So if you're not, if you're not getting your email, we need to have an email address that you will get. And I was hoping that Malachi would volunteer or be one of the volunteers. We're looking for 2 people to volunteer to be on that group to help put together that planning organization. And you can look at or read the minutes from the last planning commission and watch the video if you want to know what it's all about. So anyway, does anybody want to volunteer for that now? We need 2 people.
I'll give it strong consideration.
I think Pat Smith should.
Mr. Chairman, if I could be so bold, this is the beginning of an email list. We just pass it down and then you can take
Okay.
it on with you.
So Les, would you be interested in that?
I would. Just in terms of what would our time frame be, just rough. I mean,
Well, it's just being put together now. Do you remember how many, we wanted 2 planning commissioners, 2 city council, is that right?
You know, I don't remember. I didn't review the booklet in detail.
Okay.
That was just
It was
you're talking about
it
the booklet
sounds
of how the
fairly
county...
inclusive, and I'd be just asked to work with the group, and
It would be
I've got
the-
a fair amount of background in it, so I think
Yeah.
I'm sold.
And Malachi had experience with
Yeah.
that too. I think you guys, you
be
two would be
fine.
the perfect. But Malachi didn't respond to my question.
So then we make a motion that Malachi join me?
Well, let's not make a motion for Malachi. but,
Volunteer him.
You know, we can, you know, at least if you would volunteer, that'd be great because
I will do that, and
your
I'll-
expertise would be
Thank you.
valuable in putting that group together. And then we'll get a hold of Malachi and see if he'll volunteer as well. So, any other business from the commission? Shall we adjourn? Somebody want to make a motion?
I make a motion that we adjourn this meeting.
Made by Natalie Smith,
I second.
seconded by Patrick Smith. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. We're adjourned. Thank you.